Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are in ApocTober. So you know what that means. We're talking the post-apocalypse and playing games in the post-apocalypse. So, let's go ahead and get into that. We're going to be discussing post-apocalyptic paradise, as you've probably seen in the thumbnail. And discussing ways to do a post-apocalyptic game where you're kind of recovering now, like you're in the recovery phase and the build-up phase and the return to apocalyptic normalcy, I suppose, phase of a game. So, of a story. So, before we get into that, let's do Dan's introductions and announcements. Yes, I'm switching up our segment titles. So, Dan's introductions and announcements. But even though Dan's not here, we will let him have that one, because Skrat has one also. So, you know. But we'll get to that in a minute. Before we do, I'm Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and that can be found on YouTube, Facebook, stuff like that. It is theiopc.com or innofplanarcrossroads.com. Either one still works right now. Let me see, our link buttons are here, so we should be set for you if you want to try those out. YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, to Subscribestar, PayPal, Locals. We also have a Patreon. So I do have to rework the website, but that's the website, and it's got a lot of stuff right there on it for you to find out and look at if you want to. So that's what I have. I don't have any other announcements right now, since there's not a whole lot that I'm changing or switching up at the moment. So that means I can switch it over to, I can let my guest go, Skrat.
Yes, that is me. I am Skrat from over at A Squirrel Plays on YouTube, where I like to make videos mostly talking about writing and TTRPGs and some of the happy overlap in between the two. And when I'm lucky, I get to do the occasional TTRPG review, be it an official game that you can go out and purchase or a homemade one that somebody made. I got one I'm hoping to do fairly soon. They told me not to say any names yet, though, so I gotta wait. But currently, in the meantime, I am trying to get into experiment with some videos where we actually make some stuff instead of me just throwing out free advice for everyone. I just did one on the different ways you can make a bartender, so that was fun. We'll see how well that one does, and then maybe we'll get some more. Who knows? But that's that.
Yeah, it's not doing terrible. It's got 656 right now.
No, but like the last one had 3,000, so
No, well, fair.
Yeah.
But that was about flawed characters and stuff, and it had a Dark Souls squirrel on the picture, I guess, or something like that.
It did.
So there you go.
Oop, right now I'm punching the microphone.
Oh, I almost forgot. Let me see. I gotta look at my list of shout-outs. Hold on, people.
Oh, no.
Live. We're doing it live.
Oh, well, if you don't have one, I got somebody.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yes. He just joined the server recently. He's making his own game, and he had just started a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
And
so who is this person?
Let me go find him real quick. He seems to be getting good traction already, but he's only got a few videos. Where do you go? Scroll. Tales from Elsewhere Games.
Tales from Elsewhere Games.
There he is. He's pretty cool, dude. He's been chatting in the server a bit. He's very into game design.
Let's see. Different.
It looks like we both made an HP video kind of in the same time frame, and they both did good for us. So apparently HP is a hot topic.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people like to talk about HP and trying to figure that out because they don't like the dissonance between the two.
Hello, I'm Peter.
There we go. Okay, so Tales of Elsewhere Games. He is at 671 subscribers right now. So now, I guess, is the time to go in there and sub to him, I'm going to subscribe right now. So we're at 671-ish. You guys go over there. Let's get him up to 1,000 and see how that goes. If he gets to wanting to spotlight his RPG himself, maybe he'll pop in here sometime or something. That'd be fun.
Ooh.
So, all right. So that's Tales from Elsewhere Games. Check it out. And I think that's our shout out, courtesy of Skrat. So Levi's shout out is done. And that means it's time to grab your preferred beverages and join us around the hearth. Depending, let me see, it's October, so depending on where you are, there might be a fire in that hearth. And you can join our discussion about, well, post-apocalyptic paradise. Let's go. All right. So, oh yeah, there we go.
He's stoked
He's
for the
ready.
end of the world.
Every squirrel's ready for the end of the world. It's the end of the world as he knows it, and he feels fine. All right. So, an appropriately cute post-apocalyptic squirrel gets us into the our first part of the discussion. So, what we're going to do first is I've got some notes written down myself, and then Dan and Kristen, who should be joining us later. Kristen likes to join in on these post-apocalyptic game discussions. We are going to go over some of their points that they have until they get here. So, my first point, some of my first chat points are rebuilding is fun. So you can have this, I was joking with Skrat before we got on here, that this is when you would do something like a Fallout 4 and stuff where they have the base building and things like that. People like to do that. Even in non-post-apocalyptic games, people like to play with the idea of building up their own base and such. So rebuilding or building is fun.
I can add to that one, not to cut you off, but some people may have played at the Dragon Heist module. That's what I started with in my first campaign, but promptly tossed it. But we did get the Tavern from it, and I have heard many people that played that module. This is what happened. It became a tavern simulator. Like I made upgrades they could save up money for and do things to add on to it, which would give them little bonuses and stuff. Oh yeah, they were all over that. They wanted to add things that didn't even give them anything. Like they wanted to buy a piano for it and all this other stuff.
Well, see, it's really funny when you let your players go with it and do their own thing. It's amazing how many people in a fantasy setting want to bring normalcy. Mm-hmm. They want to bring something normal and everyday feeling into the fantasy and give it a fantasy feel in that same moment. There's something psychological there. Maybe we'll dive into that in another chat sometime. Remember resource management if you're doing any kind of post-apocalyptic game, because you do want to, like with the rebuilding and stuff like that, you do want to have some need for that resource. Otherwise, it's not going to feel very post-apocalyptic anymore. So, personal or societal, either way, can have similar considerations. That's the word I've got written down there. So, whether that's time is always a resource that you're going to be using in either one of those. Interpersonal relationships are going to be considerations that you're looking at there. Those are going to be true over both situations. So, whether you're doing we're rebuilding an entire town, or we're rebuilding our own little settlement, or we're rebuilding our own homestead in this post-apocalypse, you can have a different feel for each of those, but they are going to have a lot of overlap in their considerations. So embrace that overlap. It means less work for you in many ways. Think like a scavenger. It's a good idea to do. And use real maps. That's a thing you can do in the post-apocalypse. Use real maps. Remember to keep some things dangerous. So even in this rebuilding phase, keep certain things dangerous. They can have their safe little bubble or mostly safe little bubble, but if there's no adventure in going and getting those resources or making those connections to other trade routes with people, then there's no real tension. You need the tension. Remember in the post-apocalypse that waterway transport was big in the... That's why we have so many cities along rivers, is because waterway transport was a thing that was useful. And that would be true in any type of post-apocalyptic setting as well. And then use high and low tech to your advantage. So even, I mean this in like a post-apocalypse, you may have a post-apocalypse, but what if that car's engine doesn't work? Well, then they can take the car and they can hook some horses up to it after they take the engine out and have a horse-drawn carriage again. So you can play around with that type of thing. I saw that in a Twilight Zone episode. But you can play with those type of things and make it into your own little... They can make it into their own little fun version of the apocalypse. So, that's what I've got right now from my points. Do you have any points, Skrat, you want to get into before we go to the ones from Avenue Studios?
I figured since you were just hitting some bullet points, we could just go on to Dan's. It didn't look like he had a whole super lap there, so probably won't take but a minute.
Okie dokie.
Not to dunk on him or anything.
He's not here to defend himself. So, alright, post-apocalyptic paradise. Their notes for that are pockets of civilization will spring up around rich resource areas. This kind of is similar to what I was saying about the waterways, so do remember those things for your setting. NPCs and baddies from strong personalities that naturally become leaders. I think he's meaning there, you can use that. They're going to have strong personalities. They become the leaders, which is what we often see both in real life and in fiction. Locations could be flavored based on the major resource, making them unique. I'm thinking of, if we're going back to video games and the Fallout video games, those have their own unique feel, but there's also a unique feel to the Pit DLC, or the, Big Mountain DLC in New Vegas, or even Far Harbor in Fallout 4 had its own feel. So, they're going to have that flavoring around their own resource. Is there knowledge of the pre-apocalypse or not? So people groups with that knowledge will be powerful, feared, desired, i.e. Brotherhood of Steel and the Enclave in Fallout. So it is obvious that we all like Fallout, the Fallout game series here.
Mm-hmm.
What has changed from the world we now know? So it adds the mystery and fun at a meta level for the player. So what's different from... because most post-apocalyptic games we play are set in a pseudo version of our world. We see this most. We can also find that to be a useful storytelling tool to have things just a little bit off of the normal to make it fun. And then what are the new dangers in the world or old ones that have resurfaced now that advanced civilization is gone? Those are some interesting points. When he said resurface now that advanced civilization is gone, I was like, oh, did they revive dinosaurs before the collapse? I mean, you could have dinos in the apocalypse then. So those are some
radiation brought them back to life.
Zombie dinosaurs brought back to life by toxic waste and radiation.
Instead of the glowing ones, you have the glowing T-Rexes. That wouldn't be... I guess you got glowing death claws, though, don't you? So,
you know, I'm not sure if they have glowing death claws. I know they had big ones.
I think they're also in Fallout 4, but I want to say I think they were in 76 also. They're in one of them. It's hard to keep those apart because they look the same.
Yeah, same engine. Imagine that. Bethesda using the same engine for another game.
Yeah, well, the same era of the same engine on top of that.
Bethesda.
Actually, I went to Far Harbor for the first time last week.
Oh.
I played Fallout 4 a lot with none of the DLC, and I have just started playing like a few weeks ago with all the DLC, so I'm seeing new things, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, on the note of resource gathering, I will throw it out there. Like you brought up the settlement building. I do wish somebody would make a game that was just that. Your goal is to go out and gather stuff and bring it back and build up a thing. That would keep me entertained for days. But handling resources is something that usually catches my interest. It's like, oh, that seems like it would be fun. But as far as video games go, it usually ends up not being fun. It ends up being tedious, and you got to run one thing to one box to another box, and becomes a pain. So I haven't really dealt in it with TTRPGs, but I will say EZD6, the new, well, yeah, I guess you can still call it new, the Wasted Worlds add-on for EZD6, it had what I thought was a very clever way of handling resource management. It's super duper simple, but it's still important enough to keep an eye on. So you have, I think they just call it resource or resources. It's just this abstract thing to keep up with. And that is both your food, water, and ammo. So you can, if you have one resource point, it's up to you whether you want to put it in your gun or put it in your belly. So you don't have individual things to track. And for the most part, I think it was just like one resource a day for food, one resource a day for ammo, unless you get into some particularly heavy firefights. And then there's a couple different guns that burn more ammo, and they take up 2 resources. But I haven't got to try it yet, but reading through it, I was like, oh man, that is brilliant. Because it's very boiled down to the bare minimum, but still enough of it there to be concerned with. It's like, hey, we don't want to run out of these, we're 3 days away from town. So.
Right. Yeah, you can make it as crunchy or as soft as you want. Crunchy or as smooth as you want, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But if the more crunchy you make it, the more they're going to have to think about and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that one's good for if you're doing a long term, you would want some more crunch. I think since EZD6 is designed to pick up and play and not have to do full-on multi-month, multi-year campaign type of things, it's meant for a cool, fun campaign, trying something out, maybe trying out a setting. So, I think after a while, that would be too simplistic. But for picking up and playing like if you do like we do and theme our months, then maybe that month you play in post-apocalyptic stuff. Well, you just pop in the EZD6 Wasteland one. So there you go. Since we're on the subject of systems, I would say you're going to have a harder time with magic unless you make sure to use components. This is something we mentioned last time when we were talking about different types of apocalypses. The last time we talked about different types of apocalypses. Anytime that you have any magic, it is going to change the way the world works. So you don't have to worry about contaminated food if you have prestidigitation. So that's something to think about. And that person becomes very important in your game. Because if you don't have prestidigitation and you're using disease and stuff like that in your game, which you should in a post-apocalyptic if you're going to bother have magic, you need to challenge them somehow, then somebody's going to have prestidigitation all the time. Or they're going to have to boil their water and stuff like that. So magic can make it tricky, I don't think it makes it impossible. It depends on how much you as the GM give them. And you do have options. If you're doing a setting in a post-apocalypse and you're rebuilding, then getting reliable spell components might be something that you would want your characters to build up and invest in. You might want to really think about that for trade routes and stuff, because some of those components, if you go back to using components, which again, that's another resource that a mage would have to think about, and probably is a good idea, unless you're playing something other that doesn't use that. They usually have other restrictions, like the amount of magic they have. Getting those trade routes to get certain things for the future of the town, or the future of the settlement, or the future of the stronghold that they're in. Maybe it's just a stronghold. That could be something that motivates the players in different avenues. And you could have actually inter-party drama of, well, do we expand further into this towards the fresher water source, or do we go ahead and work on this trade route that we have to our settlement and try to secure that so that we can build that up and then come back and get that another fresh water source. Could be difficult. If you already have one that you're using, there might be motivating circumstances. So that's something I would encourage you to look at.
I may have brought it up last time we did this, but Mouse Ritter would also be really good. I mean, you can just scrap the idea of being mice and replace it with people, but it has some wonderful mechanics in it. I think would lend itself very well to a post-apocalypse type of setting, because you're constantly... Ooh, I keep punching the microphone. You're constantly scrounging for that in that one, trying to find equipment. All your equipment has durability to it, so some breaks, you just pick up whatever's nearby and you're cobbling things together. So and it'd be a good one.
Yeah, and I think it's good that if you do a durability system, making it where they have a repair option that doesn't require the exact same thing is probably good. Fallout does this. Lots of other games do this with, it takes this many resource. They don't specify exactly what all the time, but it takes this many resource. That's a good compromise, I think.
I think the way it works in Mouse Ritter, and I could be just talking out my rear end here, but I think it's if you pick something up, just a random thing, and use it on the spot and break it, I think it's toast permanently.
Permanently.
Yeah. But if you have something that's been crafted, or you found and took back and had it smithed, then you can break it, but you can take it back and have it repaired. So, like, if you find a magic item or whatever the equivalent is in your setting, it won't be gone for good. You just have to take it back and throw some gold at the smith to have it fixed. It's the things you find out in the wild. Like, if you manage to kill a snake, take its fang out and use it, you could potentially break it and not get it back home.
I think that's a good way to do it too.
That's pretty good, because you get generally 3 ticks on everything. Like, every time you get in a combat, you roll to see if you put 1 tick on it or not, and in 3 it's busted. So if you're out adventuring and you get in a fight and you pull something off somebody, you could still use it a few times and be safe, so it's not gonna suddenly explode on you.
There you go.
Unless your GM's really mean, I guess they might add something in. But you also, in that one, have very limited inventory space. You have 6 slots and then a couple things on you that you can equip. And, your food takes up 1 slot. So.
Yeah.
It works pretty good, though.
Well, it has seemed to work well with, at least in theory. I haven't played it, but it seems like it would work well in theory.
I've done 1 or 2 sessions with it, and then I was in a play-by-post for a while, and it was a lot of fun.
Okie dokie. Well, oddly enough, we are already at about the 30-minute mark.
Wow.
Yeah. It's going pretty quick today, and I'm keeping us on time because we want to tell Kristen and Dan that it's their fault that we're not on time. So
all their fault.
We're going to try to stay pretty well on time. So do you have a final thought? Well, we are to new segment title. It's not really a new segment, but it's a new segment title. It's Skrat's final question. So Skrat gets to ask a question, and this is when we also do our final thoughts. We bring up the stuff and things like that. So I have a final thought, but do you have a final question ready, or would you like me to start with my final thought?
I have part of one, but it's kind of dependent on how your apocalypse came to be. So the question is, in your ideal setting, like when you're running a game, which do you think should be more dangerous? The inhabitants, like creatures running around, or other people, or the environment?
Well, not to spoil too much for our next game, our next chat, but I personally think the environment should be more dangerous than just all the other monsters and critters and stuff like that are in the area. Because then there's no stopping it. You're not going to stop the storm. It's coming whether you want it to or not. And it affects the entire battlefield. So it's not the entire thing has to be under consideration by both bad guys and good guys. So protagonist and antagonists, I should say. So that's my personal opinion.
All right, so your comment for the video is environmental spoilers, I guess.
Environmental spoilers. There we go. Not bad. All right, so that's the comment for this one. And then I had a final thought to borrow from our last chat, something that Skrat brought up and I meant to bring up also, was timelines and things like that. Choice and consequence. The idea of if you're doing... So going back to my example, if you choose to go towards the water source and get more fresh water, that means that someone else is pushing towards that trade route, securing that trade route. So you're having real world effects with your choices, and it's not just this is what we'll do this time, and then they come back and nothing really changes in the world state. So that means that every time the caravan comes through, they get an update on the world state, and it actually does change. And this is not as complicated as it might sound. All you have to do is, you have a map on where you as the GM have a map on where bad guys are and what their basic intentions are, and if players go one way, they go the others type of situation. And they can fuss with the bad guys can fuss with each other too. You can do some rolling behind the scenes to take care of that, or have your players roll randomly. That's always fun. The secondary final point, letting your players roll for the bad guys without them knowing they're rolling for the bad guys is fun. You can say, go ahead and, hey, I need a d20 roll. Why don't you roll me a d20? And then all of a sudden they roll, nat 20! Oh, whoa. Is that good or is that bad? I just say, you'll find out.
It's good for somebody.
All right. Well, that's my final thought and my answer to your question. You didn't answer your question, though.
Well, it would, if it's a Fallout kind of thing, I would say the environment, maybe, because you can make some pretty cool monsters too, like Deathclaws. But if it's a thing, like there was some show came out a while ago, girl I was with was watching, the power went out everywhere. There was just all of a sudden no power. Like, it was a pretty cool concept. The show was not very good, but it was a cool concept. But in that case, there really wouldn't be any environmental stuff going on until, I guess, maybe if you hit winter, if you were in a colder part of the world.
Or summer in the city.
Yeah, but for the most part, that'd be the people you have to worry about in that setting. So, But I do like the idea of environment stuff being the dangerous part, and when we get to the last two where we're making adventures and characters, I have a storm ready to go.
Oh, all right. Well, more environmental spoilers, I guess. All right. Well, I guess that's enough for Skrat's final question / our final thoughts. We hope you've enjoyed, and let me see. I think that's all we have to shout out right now. So check out the Inn of Planar Crossroads. You can do that at innofplanarcrossroads.com or theiopc.com. Either one works. You can check out A Squirrel Plays on YouTube. And you can check out also our shout out this time, Tales from Elsewhere. Oh, we're trying to get him up to 1,000. Tell him the Inn of Planar Crossroads and Skrat from A Squirrel Plays sent you. As always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Beans.
Yeah.
Alright. You had one queued up, so cool beans. I didn't have to dig into my notes there. Alright. Got that one.
I'm surprised I thought of it in time.
You did, though.
This is usually a thing I think of about halfway through episode 4.
Halfway through episode 4. Well, you may as well mention it because I have a list going now. I made a list. I was going through my subscribers and like, this one's still active, this one's not, this one's still active, this one's not. So I put some on there. Okay. So that's post-apocalyptic paradise. Now we're wicked wasteland weather. That should be fun. We haven't talked about weather and environment in, I think, since the June recording, so we'll be able to take care of that.